This is the Viltrox 20mm 2.8. A lot of people have been asking me to review this lens, so here it is. Big thanks to PerGear for sending it over to me to review, and if you want to check it out for yourself, you can use the link in the description and get a 10% discount off as well. Now, this lens is interesting because it is a 20mm lens, so it's a wide-angle lens, but it's super compact, and it's only $158. Before even diving in, it's hard to say I would not recommend this lens because it is so cheap. But how much of a punch does it really pack for $158? Now, 20mm is a great focal length if you are shooting landscapes, architecture, and street photography, and you can even get by with 20mm for some real estate jobs as well. Personally, I've been using this lens as an everyday carry focal length for the past couple weeks. Normally, you would think 20mm, not really an everyday carry focal length, but I've been shooting on the Sony a7CR, and when you throw it into the APS-C mode, it becomes a 30mm equivalent. So it's right there in between 35 and 28, which are probably the two most common everyday carry focal lengths, and I've actually really been enjoying that 30mm equivalent. So how does the lens hold up, especially on a 61 megapixel sensor where cheaper quality lenses can kind of be 50-50? Now for $158, you can't expect the sharpest lens out there. And for the most part, the lens does hold up well, but in the corners you can tell they are quite soft, especially when you are shooting at f2.8. Once you stop down to f4 to f5.6, it starts to look a little bit better in the corners. But even then, the only way you're ever really going to notice how soft it is in the corners is if you are pixel peeping in Lightroom. But by the time you export the photo out of Lightroom and you're just looking at the JPEG, you're probably not going to be able to notice the lack of sharpness in the corners. So I personally don't think it's that big of a deal. If you're an award-winning landscape photographer and you print your photos to massive sizes, I probably would not expect you to use this lens anyways. But for posting online, especially on Instagram, this lens is more than good enough. Now, other than the sharpness, the only other thing that I can really fault this lens for is being all plastic and not being weather sealed. So I would not trust taking this lens out in any kind of extreme weather conditions like rain. Some other small things to note is the lens hood itself. When you turn it and lock it on, if I can get it, it doesn't really lock. So I've been paranoid when going out shooting that I'm going to lose the lens hood. You can hear a little latch, but it does not lock. And the only other thing is probably the fact that there is no AF/MF switch on the lens itself. So you have to switch between autofocus and manual focus in the camera settings, which takes a little bit to get used to, but the fact that the lens is already so compact and there's not really room where they could have fit an AF/MF switch on there, I kind of understand. In terms of autofocus, the lens holds up pretty well. The autofocus is great in both photo and video. And for video is where I think this lens really shines. 20mm makes a great vlogging focal length. Right now I have it on active stabilization, so it's equal to about 22 millimeters. But sometimes active stabilization doesn't really work very well on non-Sony lenses, so third-party lenses. But it seems to be doing a pretty decent job. Walking around, looks pretty steady. Now I do not have an ND filter that fits this lens, so I have a polarizer on here, but the filter thread is 52 millimeters. Now, one of the reasons I really wanted the Viltrox 20mm for vlogging is because the Sony 20mm 1.8, it's not exactly compact. It's not a big lens, but it's a little too big for vlogging. And for vlogging, you want a very small, compact camera. So for that, I think the Viltrox 20mm 2.8 is perfect. And I think my complaints about the lens not being very sharp in the corners don't really matter when it comes to vlogging, because most of the time your corners aren't really going to be sharp and they're not going to be the focus of the vlog anyways. Like I mentioned earlier, it's hard not to recommend this lens for $158. 20mm is a very versatile focal length for both photo and video. Now, I've been a big fan of the Sony 20mm 1.8 for a long time, so going into reviewing this lens, I was really interested in seeing how it stacks up compared to the 20mm 1.8. I'll go ahead and throw a little size comparison on the screen so you can see just how compact the Viltrox 20mm is. And I don't think it will be replacing my 20mm 1.8 by any means, but I have definitely think I've found a different use case for this lens. Just to wrap it all up, there's not a whole lot to say about this lens that I haven't already touched on. For $158, I would highly recommend it to anyone who is looking for an affordable wide-angle lens. So I have no doubt that you'll be able to shoot great photos and videos with this lens. Now, this lens was sent to me to review, so I did not pay for it. And if you were to ask me if I would personally buy this lens for $158 when I already own the 20mm 1.8, I would say yes, because I've been looking for a compact, small lens that I can use for vlogging, and I think that is where this lens really shines. So just let me know if you guys have any questions about this lens down in the comments, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Big thanks to Gear for sending this lens over to me, and thanks for watching the video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like the video and subscribe to help support me, and I hope I can inspire you guys to get out and take more photos. Go out and shoot.